Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for coming to our Summer 2020 Philadelphia chapter of the WFN with the IFA. We are very, very excited to have all of you join us virtually. For those of you who are new to the group, the local chapters of the Women's Franchise Network are designed to create, promote, and inspire a network of business professionals dedicated to strengthening the success of women in the franchise industry. We would like to foster connections among women in franchising, bringing them together at engaging events to address issues, share ideas, offer solutions. The Philadelphia chapter of the WFN is a local community open to franchisors, franchisees, multi-unit owners, and franchise industry suppliers. The chapter holds meetings and events throughout the year devoted to networking, industry knowledge, and charitable outreach. If you are not a member of the WFN and wish to join, please reach out to myself or to Elle, and we will send you the registration information for membership. There is no fee to join. There's no cost to join, but the membership will provide you with added benefits to attend some closed non-public events and activities. We do also have a Facebook page. If you would like to follow, please look for us on IFA WFN Philly. I think it's Philly chapter. I don't have Facebook open at the moment. And so I would like to go ahead. So we do hold normally we hold three events. Our spring event was canceled. Unfortunately, we are now having our summer virtual event. Our hope is that we will have a fall virtual event, and then we will just see how it goes. If we need to add another virtual event, hopefully we won't have to go to a third virtual one. So I'd like to introduce our panel, and I will ask them just to say a quick hello after I read their little bio, and then we will get started. So Colleen Levin is joining us today from St. Clair Solutions. She is a CPA and principal with the firm and specializing in representing businesses in the franchising industry. Colleen joined St. Clair Solutions in 1986, takes great pride in the fact that the firm is one of the last locally owned accounting firms of the greater Philadelphia region. Is also consistently ranked as one of the Delaware Valley's top accounting firms, as well as the top workplace. Consulting with business owners and key management, she helps companies streamline operations, improve systems that improve their bottom line. And clients rely on Colleen for accounting, auditing, and tax services, as well as business planning, billing, bookkeeping, payroll, human resources, and software. Colleen and St. Clair have been an active member and supporter of IFA and the WFN for many years, and we are excited to have Colleen join us today. She is a frequent guest speaker at franchise industry events, and WFN is one of them. Thank you for joining us, Colleen.
Thank you, Dawn. Thank you so much for that lovely introduction, and hello, everyone. So happy to be here and looking forward to having a fun time tonight. Thank you.
Excellent. And next, I will introduce Alesia Visconti, who joins us from FranServe and Franchise Dictionary Magazine. She has over 20 years of experience serving as a C-level executive for both domestic and international companies in service industries. In each of her executive leadership roles, Alesia was responsible for driving organizational development and led the company to operate at its peak levels of performance. After learning about and subsequently becoming passionate about franchising industry in 2014, Alesia became a FranServe consultant. She experienced the value of FranServe's training, mentoring, and support programs firsthand as a certified franchise consultant and quickly became one of FranServe's top producers. Alesia's achievements led to mentoring other consultants and spearheading success programs for the company. Her vast experience in driving organizational success, orchestrating innovative programs, and leveraging partner relations served as the perfect foundation to further expand FranServe as she took on the role of president in 2016 and then CEO in 2018. As the driving force behind FranServe, Alesia never loses sight of her mission to help others achieve their dreams of business ownership through franchising. To that end, she has dedicated FranServe to training and supporting the industry's best franchise consultants. As a highly committed and active leader in the franchise industry, Alesia serves on the International Franchise Association's VetFran and membership committees. Alesia also founded FranAid, an initiative of FranServe that donates globally to organizations helping others. Alesia says, as a purpose-driven organization, PDO, we take pride in our social responsibility to share our success with those who need it most. Alesia is CEO and publisher of Franchise Dictionary magazine, and she is also an author and professional speaker who lives by the motto, work hard, play hard, help others, and repeat. Thank you so much, Alesia, for joining us.
Well, thank you, Dawn. One of the things I just realized is we've got to cut down that bio, right? So, But thank you, ladies, for having me on. I'm looking forward to it, and I'm excited. I always love doing things that have, empowering women. So, looking forward to tonight.
Thank you so much. And then we also have Elle joining us tonight. She is a partner of the national law firm Fox Rothschild, where she co-chairs firm's franchising, licensing, and distribution practice group. Elle concentrates her practice on commercial transactions and compliance matters representing primarily franchisors, area developers, and master franchisees. Elle is co-chair of this Philadelphia Women's IFA WFM chapter. She is an IFA certified franchise executive, a member of the IFA Legal Symposium Task Force, and ABA Forum on Franchising Women's Caucus. Elle frequently writes and speaks on legal issues in the franchise industry and has presented multiple times at ABA Forum on Franchising annual meetings and at the IFA Legal Symposium. Elle authored a chapter in the ABA book on franchise exemptions, as well as chapter in the ABA Franchise Desk book. Her articles have been published in the ABA Forum's Franchise Lawyer newsletter, the Franchise Law Journal, Law 360, and Property Casualty 360. Elle has been recognized as a legal eagle by Franchise Times in the past 5 years. Welcome, Elle.
Hi, thank you. Thank you so much, Dawn, for organizing. Excited to be here. Excited to see everyone again. Thanks.
Absolutely. We are so excited everybody could join us tonight. So the first thing that we want to talk about is franchise brands who are closing deals and adding franchise owners, which is an interesting time, and we get this question from our clients all the time. So, Alesia, I'm going to throw it to you. I know you have some big wins to share. Maybe you can shed some light on what industries or specific franchise sectors that you're seeing the most activity for your consultants and their clients.
Sure. I'd be happy to talk about that. That's an exciting topic to talk about, right? Anytime franchising is growing. And my favorite hashtag is franchise strong. Right, that's what I use on social media all the time, and it's because honestly, that's what we're seeing. FranServe is, the world's largest franchise broker network. So we have a lot of brands in our portfolio. We have seen obviously some who have struggled through this, but what we have seen is very interesting is a reversal in a lot of ways of brands that might not have been considered, in demand by the candidates or the new franchisees the way they are now, right? So what happens is you'll see things that are more unsexy, as we call it. And the unsexy brands are more considered essential businesses by government. Now, we consider every business essential, right? Every franchise to us is essential. But when you're looking at candidates and potential franchisees who are investing money and considering franchising, who may not have been before, they're not as drawn to the, glamour, sexy, the ones that you would normally see them running to, right? They always, always used to go to food first, always, right? Because that's what they think of franchising. And now you see things more in, anything commercial cleaning, residential cleaning. You see things in crime cleanup. You see things in anything in the home services. Roof repair, painting. Again, not typically in industries that they run to. Senior care still popular, pet care still popular. You don't see as much as the beauty industries right now as attractive. But it's very interesting also as we progress through the pandemic, right, from March until now, how things do switch. And we do see some of the beauty ones coming back, being popular. So things are starting to change. Of course, you're still seeing things like spas, again, something that people would run to kind of in between. Some people still want them. Some people are, still waiting on that. So it's very interesting to see what happens with people. A lot of home-based businesses attractive. And I think also so much of what's happening now, the reality is people who are thinking about franchising, owning franchises who never would, almost forced to look at that because of unemployment, because of their circumstances, because of fear, because they don't want to commute, because they don't want to give up the control the way that they did when they were an employee. So, there's anything good that comes out of a pandemic, but there is always silver linings. And I think that is it. People are waking up to, what do I really want to do with my life? And where do I want to spend my time? And how do I want to go about it? And so we're seeing enormous growth in certain sectors in franchising. June was a huge month for us. May was a huge month in terms of growth. So I think the second half of the year is going to be awesome. I really do. And yeah, it's not going to always be easy or what it looked like, but that's why I like the franchise strong hashtag, because no matter what, right? Don't we pursue? We're all entrepreneurial mindsets. And so, virus or no virus, we'll all succeed in one way or another. So I'm excited. The consultants are excited. We just, we rocked it with brands. Yes, not every brand is, championing everything, but I think their time will come too. We see changes happening even now, just from month to month. So that's my happy news.
That is excellent. Thank you so much. Elle, on the other side, are you seeing brands who are entering franchising space as new brands?
Sure. So, in my practice, I represent, a cross segment of both, established franchise systems, startup and emerging franchise systems, as well as, franchisees, multi-unit owners, and then, private equity groups that are investing in franchises. So, or investing in franchise systems or multi-unit area development deals. And so I get a little bit of insight into, all these different sides that franchisors are doing, what franchisees are looking at. And I 100% agree with Alesia in the growth of the service-based concepts. We're seeing a lot of that. We were seeing a lot of that before the pandemic. And I think we're seeing a lot more of it during, both from a franchisee search perspective and a franchise launch and growth perspective, as well as, investors who are still looking at franchise brands that have potential. And as Alesia said, that would include, we've engaged a new franchise system that's a heating and cooling HVAC system. They're doing gangbusters as a business in a couple locations, and now they want to franchise. Lawn service, pest control, as Alesia said, repairs. A lot of these sectors, such as mold remediation or repairs, where franchise systems can offer national accounts with insurance carriers, because these franchisees know that they're going to get a customer base that they wouldn't normally get. They wouldn't be able to grow themselves and have those connections. So you're seeing a lot of growth both on franchisees who are searching for franchise brands to purchase, as well as the startup of new brands and growth of existing brands. So that's one segment. And, my anecdotal experience is, even in the hospitality sector, you're still seeing, activity. We have traditional sit-down restaurant locations that have attempted to shift towards a, counter-based sort of concept, takeout concept, adding in a new offering that's more takeout, quick, counter-based. We're seeing, a rise in ghost kitchen-based delivery types of concepts and services. And then one other thing that I'm seeing is I'm getting a lot of clients approaching us on trying to be opportunistic about potential real estate that would be available. And that could be in, we're seeing that in the med spa area and in some other areas that are still, still have to stick with the, brick and mortar location, that are saying, hey, I might have missed it, in 2008, 9, I'm not going to miss it again. We do have this capital, so let's figure out how, we're going to launch a franchise, and we're also going to, be the landlords or and purchase the real estate. So, there's definitely, as Alesia said, there's some segments, some industries that were hit hard, but there's a lot of growth out there as well, at least in my experience the last couple months. So I'm optimistic about the group.
Excellent. Well, that's great. So Colleen, some of the things that Elle talked about are, taking advantage of, having cash on hand. Maybe you can speak to that, as well as maybe some of the industries that your clients are in right now who are, just taking this time to grow and either acquire, maybe, I don't know what you're seeing.
Sure. Believe it or not, I'm seeing positive results coming out. Just not saying that companies are surviving, thankfully. Believe it or not, one of the largest areas that are really booming is the home care services. Think about it. All those nursing home situations that are occurring where people are starting to take their elderly back home. And now they're hiring all these home care services. So they are really busy right now, and they're struggling, believe it or not, to find help. They have such backlog, and their service needs, their demand is so high that they're struggling to find people, believe it or not. Another area that we're seeing a lot of growth, believe it or not, is the snack food base type locations. Their sales are year over year up immensely. It's amazing how we're seeing that growth out there. And very similar to, like Alesia and Elle said, the outdoor landscaping type service industry, they're extremely busy. The revenue's way up. And if you think about it, what are people doing since they're not going on vacation now? That's what we're seeing. People are investing back in their own homes, their backyards, their landscaping. So that industry has been really doing well. And then another industry we're seeing doing tremendously well is some manufacturing, believe it or not. There's a high demand for certain products, and they're busier than ever. So similar to what Alesia and Elle said, I'm seeing a lot of growth this year, believe it or not. A lot of positive phone calls with my clients as I've been going, trying to wrap up their 19 taxes right now. It's refreshing to hear that they're doing well, and they're knocking on wood just like a lot of us probably. So 2020 is coming out strong. Back end's going to be a little questionable still. We still have the virus hitting around, and we'll see. I'm optimistic, just like Elle just said. I'm positive. I think we'll be okay. We got to weather the storm like we always do. We're women strong, right? We'll do it. We'll make it. So.
Excellent. Thank you, Colleen. I'm going to stay with you for a minute here. I think that there are a lot of people who are seeing what's happening in the industry, and, the SBA has really helped, and IFA has done a lot to push that on the PPP and the EIDL programs that became available earlier this spring when things started looking, pretty scary. What are some of the suggestions now that a lot of people on this call tonight have probably heard lots and lots of things about PPP? So we're getting into the news about forgiveness and how that might be a real win on top of getting that really needed funding in the beginning of this year. What are some of the things you're recommending to your clients on that front?
Yeah, it's absolutely a win-win for those who got their PPP. And good news, if you have not already, the June 30th deadline was extended to August 8th. So there's still opportunity. If you have not, I highly recommend go for it. Get it. And the application process, yeah, it's a little tedious, but it's pretty streamlined now. Early on, it was not. Trust me, it was a big challenge on top of tax season, dealing with clients, helping them through that process and the information gathering. But the lenders have been fabulous. They're much more prepared and able to accommodate to get the loans through. And I'll tell you, believe it or not, if you're struggling with any particular lender, especially the large organizations out there, you may want to look at your local banks. They really pulled off some really amazing turnaround time. Turnaround time was a struggle as well. Some companies took weeks, some took days. So it's interesting to see which lenders are really stepping up the plate. And just like all of us in the accounting industry, we had our hands full and busy. They were busier with the SBA and financing with all these loans. So that was the struggle. But the good thing about the loan forgiveness, they have streamlined with a nice easy form they have out there for the simple type allocations. The key here really is just focus on spending it on payroll. Don't worry about the 60% rule and all that. Just focus on paying for payroll. And then you'll be automatically forgiven 100%. That's really the focus we're trying to keep our clients on. And then maintaining really good records, just in case someone asks for supporting documentation. Managing the loan in a separate bank account. Some clients have gone to that extreme. That's okay. We wouldn't real highly recommend that because it's more bookkeeping work, but that's okay. And just focus on payroll. I had some clients had to do some incentive payroll to bring back some of their people that were either furloughed or let go, and they're busy and they need them back. Like in the heating and oil industry, she struggled to get back some of her employees. So spending it on incentives, that's valid payroll costs that would qualify under the forgiveness. So again, we're just really encouraging clients just to focus on the payroll. Don't get all caught up in all the other calculations. And we're going to, hopefully, and the other thing that we're just recently hearing, we don't know if it's permanently accepted yet, but loans of $50,000 or less may not even have to send in a loan forgiveness application. That would be a big help. I mean, if you think about it, the paperwork alone, and then the time invested to process has to go from the company owner to the banks, then up to the SBA, and then back down. That's a lot of paperwork and a lot of time. Time is money for everybody here. And that would be a win for any of the loans of the $50,000 or less, which is a significant amount for the small business people. So hopefully that'll help some of us.
I just learned something new tonight. Thank you. I kind of keep on that topic, but that is some definitely new information. Thank you so much. Alesia, from your perspective, I'm not sure how much you get into this topic or how much your consultants even talk about this with some of the brands that they represent, but how do you think that impacted them in a positive way this year?
Yeah, it's interesting, Dawn, because the consultants don't really get involved in those conversations. However, I'm on two different roundtables with panels of franchisors that we just, off the cuff. It's an easygoing kind of conversation. And this topic, no surprise, comes up quite a bit. Right, I was just went on yesterday, and we're just shooting the breeze of what's working and what not. And of course, the PPP comes up, and it is amazing because truly it is a godsend for so many of the businesses to have kept their lights on. And, just like, Colleen, you were talking about how everything changes, and I feel like it still changes every hour, right, in terms of what's happening and what's not. And the IFA, has been a godsend to disseminating information to the brands, but the brands are still, trying to figure things out, trying to understand things. And when we speak to them about just what's going on with them, entrepreneurs, right, we jump off the cliff and we build our planes on the way down, right? We're always forward thinkers, and we have to literally, I hate using the word pivot because that's like the word right now, but that's all we have to do. And the PPP, for so many brands, allowed them to even breathe, to even figure out how to go forward, because as we can remember during those first, 2 weeks or so, I mean, we all just held our breath. We had no idea with the pandemic what was going on. And I think so many brands would have truly gone out if there wasn't something, a life preserve something. So yeah, they moan a bit about the forms and the wait period and whatever, but man, they are so grateful. So, seeing how many brands hunkered down and really put that to great use, that really helped franchising move forward in ways that I don't think we even really understand unless you sit down with a bunch of people and hear how impactful that was.
Thank you. Thank you. Elle, one of the things Alesia mentioned was the IFA, keeping that information going. And the announcement came out on Monday night from Matt Haller about the SBA releasing information basically to the public, which they do. That's part of the SBA's, it's, transparency with the American people. Can you speak to maybe that perspective from the legal component of disclosure and information that might help some of the people on the call tonight?
Yeah, I mean, I'm interested to hear actually to turn it back to you, Dawn, and on what they said about it. I mean, really, there's not, I don't really have much to comment on it from a legal perspective. I mean, the information came out. I don't think there was enough information yet, right? So it creates splashy headlines, that and outrage about these companies that have taken money. But from what I understand, and I'll be honest with you, I haven't had a lot of time since Monday night to dig too deep into it. But I do know that I think they only released those companies, the names of those companies that took out loans in excess of $150,000.
That's right.
Which to my knowledge, and anybody else, correct me if I'm wrong, only represents about like 20% of the total amount of the loans that were taken. So there's the vast majority of the loans that were taken, we don't have any information on right now. So I sort of feel a little, I hate to be political about it in terms of saying like, I don't think we have the information to comment too much, but I don't want to put you back on the spot, but I wasn't on that call 2 nights ago. So if there was any comments on that, I'm interested to hear them.
Well, I wasn't on the call. I think Alesia, I'm not sure if that was part of the.
It was not. It was not, but it was discussed on the roundtable. But I was not on that call.
Okay. Right. Okay. I had participated in an IFA promoted event that had update that Matt was on a couple of weeks ago, knowing that this was something the SBA announced that they were doing. And apparently that is something that they always do. It's just because of the headlines and because of companies that had received money and then turned out to get private equity funding, and then they returned the money. Some of those bigger brands, but I think the whole component of it and the perspective from franchising is that, this is what literally kept people working, which kept them buying groceries, paying for services, paying for deliveries, paying for things to be coming to their house, buying masks so that they could go out in public once everybody was released from, staying at home. So I think the overall perspective, at least, from our side of this, from SMB and our team, we've looked at this and said it did, just like all of you said, it kept businesses operating, enabling them as in franchisors to support their franchisees. And, franchisors who helped their franchisees obtain funding, that was tremendous. And that was a huge undertaking. And I know that, Colleen was involved in that. Many, many people spent hours and days working on that. So, we're seeing it as a positive, and it is something that just the companies who did receive funding, just be aware of, if people ask questions, that's the way to answer it, I think, is, have something to say, but talk about the positives that came from that funding. And it is a loan unless there is the opportunity for forgiveness. So it is money that will be paid back if it's not,
To parlay a little bit too, Dawn, keep in mind too, even if you do not get 100% forgiven, think about it. It's only a 1% loan. It's not the end of the world. It's a very expensive loan. Even if 20% is not forgiven, it's still valuable money that you're utilizing. And another thing I want to remind people who applied for their loan early and got it, when they signed, they had a 2-year loan agreement. The new one that they rolled out was 5 years. You can't just assume because it changed back up to a 5-year loan that your existing loan that you originally signed a few months ago is automatically becoming a 5. No, you have to actually go back to your lenders and renegotiate that. And I'm hearing good results. They are renegotiating the loan to a 5-year. But just don't assume if you have a 2-year that it's automatically to a 5, just in case.
Okay.
Yeah, I just learned something.
Yeah, me too.
I just learned something. Thank you for that.
There you go.
Yeah.
That's it. Okay, so let's go back to a time, think back way before the pandemic, the first quarter of the year. is usually very busy. Accounting, preparation, FDD renewal. You know, our experience at SMB has been that clients have had, you know, in the past, they've crunched to get their FDD renewal done if they're an existing franchisor, and new ones are always pushing to complete in order to participate in an event so that they are legally able to go. But I think, you know, Elle, how was this year different for that FDD renewal, or even going through that registration process for your franchisors?
Sure. So from my perspective, you know, my experience and this year was better than expected. That's what I said. Better than expected. There were a couple hiccups, and I'll talk about them. But overall, just the timing, it did sort of work out, because so many of franchise systems have a 12/31 fiscal year end. So by mid-March, when the pandemic hit, you know, a lot of our clients, you know, the vast majority of our clients had, you know, were already pretty much had their audits. Many of them had already filed their state renewal registrations, or were in the process of filing them, you know, within the next week or two. So those clients were able to file them. And then the states came out, the state regulators came out fairly quickly and extended their deadlines for renewal. Many of them allowed accommodations for you know, online filing and submission in email and doing those various things. And so it almost had the effect of expanding usually the crunch time that was, you know, that couple week crunch time, expanding it out. So the responses from regulators that we got were still overall, you know, timely and responsive. We did have particularly one hiccup with New York. I think when they were switching over, I don't want to disparage New York, but when they were switching over to, you know, not working in the office, they were still demanding things go to the office, and then nobody was checking mail. So you would have filings that were just sitting, you know, we had a couple clients where filings were just sitting there, not reviewed, and we got those issues resolved. But overall, it was a much better process than I had expected in terms of getting the renewals and getting the comment letters. The other only hiccup that that we experienced, and you know, everyone's experiencing now, is the issue with item 19s. So as the renewal process went on, and as the pandemic continued to worsen, you had states, Washington being one of them, who was responding with item 19, with comment letters saying, you know, how do you justify having these item 19s from last year in your FDD during the COVID crisis? And so there was a lot of scrambling on how do we respond to that? You know, what do we say, and how do we respond on behalf of our clients? And maybe a few weeks ago, as many of you probably know, the NSA, a franchise project group that a number of the state regulators are involved in, issued their guidance on item 19s in the era of COVID. And the couple pages to digest it in a few sentences is, you know, it's the onus is now on franchisors to look back at their item 19s and their financial performance representations, and with a careful eye towards whether or not they're not misleading now in the age of COVID. So what we've been telling clients now is you have to go back to those item 19s that you made. And for some franchise systems, service-based franchise systems, there may not have been an impact. But for a lot of our, you know, franchise systems in the hospitality sector, in the fitness sectors, there was an impact. So you have to decide, you know, we have to make a judgment and work together to figure out, okay, can I still, do I supplement those item 19s with updated information so that they're not material misleading? And you have to look not just at, you know, gross revenue, but also at moving forward, okay, well, my expenses, And, you know, and are my expenses increasing to comply with COVID requirements, whether they be state, local, or you know, CDC guidelines? You know, if you're a fitness center and you're at 50% capacity, if you're at a, you know, a restaurant and you're at 50% capacity, you have to look at those things. And as anybody who knows that deals with state registration, simply, you know, slapping on a disclaimer that, oh, well, you know what, don't rely on these numbers because, you know, COVID may change them. That's not going to fly. So definitely the item 19 and how you're going to approach that. And for a lot of states that did make it through the renewal process to now go back and decide, you know, are you going to you know, to tell clients who are already struggling, who already don't have, you know, funds, now you have to go back and look at your item 19s and decide whether you have to make modifications to them. And if you do, they're material, so you may need to file an amendment in the states. That's, you know, that's tough. And people don't want to hear it, but that's probably, I would say, the number one issue that we've had to deal with from a purely disclosure and registration perspective.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, I had no idea that there were states who were even saying, you know, you could amend your item 19 and adjust. I don't even think that companies have an idea of how it's impacted them this year. And maybe, you know, Colleen, I was going to ask you a completely different question, but what is your perspective on that?
Similar to Al, we were often running early on in the year, and we typically do every year when we start these franchise audits. They're like our number one priority in scheduling, and we internally, we have a clock deadline. We use March 15th as a courtesy to help make sure the attorneys get a copy, the client gets a copy, everybody's ready to get timely filing in line, which is what I believe the due date of April 30th. But we were, believe it or not, 90% of our audits were complete almost that week that we had this pandemic. Like, what was it, March 16th? I mean, I think we were out and running and done by the 15th. So the majority of our franchisor audits were already done, filed, and already in place. So we were thrilled with that. There are a few we're still doing now because they struggled at the end there. But the other thing we found as we were plowing through our audits, we had to adapt to some additional procedures from a subsequent event perspective and footnote disclosures for the later ones, because especially now, because the readers need to know whether or not this company is still going to be around too, given the situation this year. So we had to do a little bit of, you know, we refer to as subsequent discussions with the client and to say, did you get your PPP loan? We didn't have to disclose that they got the money, the dollar amount, but we at least shared in the disclosures positive, you know, information. Yes, they're working, you know, smaller capacity employees, but they're still operating, revenue cycles still coming in, meaning their royalties and their brand fee. So we did have to add some more disclosures. But thankfully, you know, as Elle said, most of our audits were filed, done, and out. They were complete. We have not had any clients come to us yet in 2020 with regards to any modifications to disclose or update their item 19 yet. I'll be interested to see if that's really going to be something in our next cycle of work to see if we have to do that. But nice things of most of the disclosures were just really updates to ensure the readers that the financials are not going to be misleading or that the company's not going to be around next year.
Okay. So that's good to know. Okay, Alesia, going back a little bit maybe on the FTD side and also in related to what both Elle and Colleen had said, did you see some brands holding off on development in registration states because of that initial concern of what was happening? And then also maybe another question is, how are your clients addressing item 19? And we have some clients who, because of the way they're structured with food delivery or service-based, they've actually had huge increases in 2020. They are very excited to talk about that. But we are like, whoa, your item 19 does not talk about performance in 2020. So how do you work through that conversation with your brands?
Yep, and I'm happy to give some insight there. I will tell you, Ellen, Colleen, you just really summed it up beautifully. So I'm not going to be redundant on it, but I will tell you what. Yes, Dawn, we saw some brands, registration states, There's so much that could be said there, right? But that did hold off on doing, some expansion there. But I think mostly what we saw was, they were complaining about backlog in New York. The hassles of Washington State, and yes, we are hearing quite a bit of concern, may be too strong a word, discussion about what to do with item 19 and how, if they have to revise it, and that's still a murky area for a lot of brands. I think part of it is again not knowing exactly what the future looks like. Nobody has that crystal ball and how to address that. But I think that's something that comes up again and again. And for us, we're more of a sounding board on that, and because we're not the legal advisors, we're not. So we always encourage them to to work with their attorney. But we hear so much of it in terms of what's their angst point or where the blockage is for representing them or showing them to a prospective franchisee. So I think as things continue and as discussions open up and people share best practices, that's where education comes, and that's where we stand strong. So again, I don't want to be too redundant. I think Ellen and Colleen handled it so beautifully, much more elegantly than I would have. But I can say that we see what you two ladies were saying, right? We see that, we see the effect of what you were saying.
Okay. So speaking about being, sound and being cautious about things or being proactive, Colleen, how are you seeing your clients managing cash flow to be ready for development, for supporting franchisees that they might be bringing on, supporting their existing franchise owners with the tools that they need, the extra training? A financially sound franchisor is 100% essential in this industry. You can't go into this undercapitalized. So how are your franchisors handling this to be able to continue to?
Yeah, that's a great question, Dawn. With the cash flow, that's so critical right now. And what we're trying to encourage, cash flow is king. It's the most important pipeline of your business. And if you don't have strong cash flow management, some businesses really, really will struggle. So what we're trying to encourage, and this is any business, don't just look at the present. You got to look at the future, not only 2 months, 3 months, look to the 6 to 12 months, because this is going to be a long period of some slow recovery, some fast, some medium. You got to be prepared that, come 6 months down the line, am I going to be able to make my rent payment, or am I going to be able to pay my employees or my utilities? How am I going to manage that demand? So what we're encouraging to do is to watch your spending. Now may not be that time to invest capital back into business. Maybe postpone that and keep that liquid, that cash more liquid. Reach out to your lenders. Talk to your lenders. Another tool, a very good business practice tool to have as a business owner, have a business working capital line of credit with banks. It can't hurt, and it's a good utility, for these uncertain times. And then ultimately when things restore itself and cash flow replenishes itself and becomes stronger, then you'll be able to pay that back. So put yourself in a position where you have other financial resources available to you to keep you afloat, to help you, manage those costs. I am seeing also, as we're, dealing with current numbers with our clients, a decrease in some line items, particularly in the expense line items. So believe it or not, if you think about it, some businesses are saving money right now. They're not spending as much maybe for their office supplies. Believe it or not, even their janitorial toilet paper. I mean, we can't even find toilet paper in the stores right now at home. But you just think of these little things that add up on an expense for supplies and office, maybe some food. If you supply food and drinks for your employees, you don't need as much anymore. So definitely some decreasing in expenditures have helped with companies, businesses, and their cash flow. So again, try to have readiness, if you will, have resources available should there be a shortfall cash flow in a period of time, and just rely on some financing with some lenders. That's what we've been encouraging. But managing cash flow right now is critical for every business, not just franchise industry. It's any business. And what's really been nice, though, during this period, franchisors really have stepped up. I'm very, very happy with what they've internally did as a team, as a management. They really, really supported their franchisees, to the extent they postponed any royalties, brand fund fees until their franchisees got their handle on whether they got their PPP money. As you know, a lot of them weren't operating, particularly child care centers, so they struggled. So there was a lot of relief given on the franchisor level that's keeping our franchisees ultimately there and open. So that's the management team is strong and keeping their franchisees connected, which was really, really nice to hear and see.
Okay, great. Elle, one of the things that cash flow might be good for, hopefully it is not needed for this. What are some of the quick things that you would recommend people look at as we might get into some threats from COVID claims, either from employees or from customers who come into franchise locations over the next few months, and hopefully not that much longer?
Sure. I think Colleen did the perfect, segue into, what I would say is my experience over the past couple months is that, in times of crisis, franchise systems absolutely 100% want to do everything they can to help their franchisees. I mean, that's just a given. And you experience that with, as Colleen mentioned, the financial concessions, but also just the support, right? So, franchisees are asking their franchisors questions. How do we reopen? What do we do? What are best practices? And so what we've been doing is, a lot with our clients of all sizes that are franchise systems is, helping them put out these best practices memos, helping them put out, modifications to ops manuals or reopening playbooks or those sorts of things that can implement advice for franchisees who don't have the resources that the franchisor has and don't know even where to begin and are nervous about compliance. And there's always that, as everybody knows from a legal perspective, there's always weighing making sure that you're giving recommendations and not providing too much of what you have to do, and so that you don't expose yourself to vicarious liability claims or joint employer claims. And but really, honestly, if you're gonna, I hate to say it, you make a general rule, but it's sort of like with the data security issues that came up. At a certain point, you do have to provide the advice and playbook and best practices to your franchisees. And so we've spent a lot of time with that. Obviously, they're business owners. They have to comply. They have to look at what's local, and you're giving general guidance. But to the extent that your franchise system and you can provide some best practices and guidebooks and playbooks on reopening, I think that's been very useful. We've been dealing nonstop with questions about, well, can we make people execute releases and waivers and especially in some of the fitness type or membership type systems and brands, and so we've certainly been helping out with that and advising on that. And if that's not palpable from a PR perspective, we've at least worked with acknowledgments, right? So making sure that people who are coming on acknowledge and understand, what exposure there is, and also just what their responsibilities are as a customer or employee or patron or member, whatever they are, in terms of what they have to do. as well, wearing masks or keeping distance, or checking in or logging in where they might not have differently. So those sorts of things we've been helping out with. And the other thing, advice you give is, and I know that I'm a little biased here because I'm an insurance nerd. My other hat is focusing on insurance and insurance coverage. But so much of the questions that I get is, you fear somebody's going to sue us, and who's going to sue us? We have this exposure, and call your broker. Call your insurance broker. If you're a business, call your insurance broker and put them on the spot. They are your advocate. They're supposed to be working for you, and say, if someone brings an allegation, if a customer comes into my place and brings an allegation that they're suing me because for bad practices and they caught COVID, first, how likely is it that they're going to be able to prove that? But do I have coverage under my general commercial liability policy that's going to kick in so I can get defense to get that knocked out? What if my employees come back? Is that a workers' comp claim? Is it not? And talk through those things, because I always tell people, you can have the best contractual releases and waivers and all the best contracts in the world shifting liability, but if you don't have the resources through insurance or otherwise to backstop those obligations, what good is that language for you? So, definitely talk to your insurance carrier, your insurance brokers about these risks. And so that's probably one of the last things I would say. We talk to our clients about.
And Al, if it's okay, I'd like to part a little bit of comment about that. Al, you said a key word about insurance policies. Highly recommended for franchisors to have their brokers reevaluate their policies. We're finding out that a lot of what they thought was covered is not. And there's specific policies that are written for just the franchise industry. So that's a big area right now. We're calling our franchisors right now. We're saying, look, it's free. Just get it evaluated. Just make sure, peace of mind. Really, it's important, because we're learning that there's some holes in their policies. That's for sure, Al.
Yeah, whenever these things come up is when you realize, the gaps in the policies. I mean, I'm sure most of you know, the first month of, the first 2-3 weeks of March, all I spent was, looking at whether there's business interruption insurance. And, people never know until these things happen, what is and isn't covered. And people just assume because it's insurance, why wouldn't you have coverage for these events? And unfortunately, I hate telling clients that they likely don't, but sometimes you don't. Right. But great comment, Colleen, absolutely.
Okay, so I think you touched on a number of things that is definitely where the franchisor can support their franchisees. I'm curious to hear from Alesia on some of the things that she has heard, maybe one or two of the top things that you heard your franchise brands were able to do to be that resource for their franchise owners that may inspire some of the people here on the call tonight.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just want to go back 2 minutes to what we were talking about with the insurance. I was on the summer board meeting for the IFA. So we just had that, a week ago or so. And that, needless to say, that was a huge subject, right? About, the lawsuits and potential lawsuits and perception of the public of what they can do in a lawsuit and not knowing it, and that whole, how do you assign? So, of course, IFA on that immensely, and that was a huge portion of the board meeting. That was just whatever that was, like a week ago, 10 days ago that I was on. So obviously IFA right on top of that, but I just wanted to comment on that obviously it's on everybody's mindset. In terms of the franchisors, it's great because when we first had the pandemic, and we've always been a virtual company. FranServe always has been, so we didn't miss a beat when everybody had to go and work from home and all that. But so many of our franchisors didn't know how to do that, didn't know how to that, jump, and how to support their franchisees and what to do and how to handle that. And, we take it for granted now with Zoom, right? Like all of us are like Zoom experts, right? But we had to teach people. We had to teach our brands how to, do virtual training, or, do virtual support, or, do virtual discovery days, because it was like a fish out of water, right? They didn't know how to do that. So that, I think, in some ways, again, always looking for the silver lining, because nobody wants to, have a pandemic, but the brands have been able to do so much support for their franchisees by doing what we say and what we talk, over communicating. Because when you go virtual, you have to over communicate, because you're not sitting next to someone. You're not building the rapport. And they have done an enormous job doing that and creating layers of communication for their franchisees. Now, of course, some financial relief in terms of, I think Colleen mentioned it, about dropping, right, royalties. We see it with brands also expanding, right? They'll put out a program to our brokers of, okay, new franchisees, no royalties now for the rest of the year if they come on board and become a franchisee. So they're doing all kinds of incentives, both for existing franchisees and, of course, for new potential franchisees. But I think one of the things that, when you think about what franchisors are doing is, things that they didn't necessarily have to do is teaching their franchisees, giving them the tools on how to communicate to their customers during a pandemic. Because there's still that line. Do I market? Do I not? Do I reach out to the clients? Is it insensitive? Is it, we taught them, and they taught us, some of them taught us, to change your website, to change your email messages, to work, to teach your franchisees how to communicate, to keep your customers, even if your business was closed down, right? Because how many businesses closed down? You're not touching your customers, and to go dark during that period, because you can lose them. But how do you do that without sounding like you're money hungry, like you're insensitive, like you're not empathetic? So again, working together, best practices, talking about how to become a virtual company, how to communicate virtually, how to support franchisees that normally, somebody would get on the plane or go out and see and go spend time with them, and all of that's taken away. All of that's taken away. So many of the brands that we speak with, from a corporate level, there's a no travel policy. They cannot travel, even if they wanted to. Company says no travel out to any of the Z's, out to any programs, not to conferences, like nothing, right? So what do? You can't not talk to your people. You can't not talk to your tribe, right? So, I always say, your vibe attracts your tribe, right? So what are you putting out there that makes people feel still like they're connected to the brand? What are the Z's? Are they out in the dark? How do they communicate? How do they communicate to their clients? So I think all of that, franchise, we see it again and again. The franchisors are like so innovative, and it was like, oh, we need virtual discovery days. Boom, there they are, right? We're not going to let that stop us. We're training. We'll get all our manuals up. I mean, it was amazing to us how quickly. I'm not going to say the word. I'm not going to say the P word. But how quickly they move to keep business, moving and engulfing their franchisees and their franchisees' customers and employees, and that whole umbrella, so to speak. So I really think over communicating and looking at what you're using to communicate, right? Like I said, a lot of changes on websites, a lot of changes in marketing messages. Right? You had to be more empathetic, but you don't drop the ball. You don't not market. You don't not stay in touch with your customers, even if your customers can't come in physically into your location. Because when it does open up, or when things do, you want to still have that vibe, right? Because that's your tribe. So that's what we've been so impressed with, really, how quickly the franchisors would say, yeah, everything that we love and cherish and all of that, yeah, we'll put that over there. Okay, that goes over there for now, and we'll jump into the pond, all new, and figure it all out. And they've been, it just lights me up every day when I see that. It just lights me up. So, yeah. So I think that's been one of the treasures in seeing that.
Lots of wonderful, wonderful things. I will gonna stop sharing this for a second. Everybody can see everybody else maybe. I want to pull up just the other slide here and really transition. Whoops, did I pull up there? Yeah, okay.
That's it.
To the thank you, because I really do owe a huge amount of thanks to Alesia, to Colleen, to Elle. Elle's stuck with me for the foreseeable future, so she can't go anywhere. She has no choice. And her team helped put out the invite and our information. And what I'd like to do is make sure that everybody does have the contact information for our panelists if you have any questions for them and want to have a follow-up. They give and give and give. Alesia will probably not be so much available Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday next week. They're having a huge virtual conference, and so I know she will be busy with that. But now I will. And we were able to get her. So now I'm going to turn off this screen share, and I would like to invite everyone to unmute their computer, Zoom, whatever. And hopefully you didn't finish drinking, because we did run a little longer than our industry. That's because I lost control of my paper. You can see your glass.
I do have it here. There it is.
And, you know, and then I just want to say thank you all for taking time. I know everybody's working extra long hours. You work from home. You never really have an end of the day. And it's not drinking alone if you're drinking with friends. So happy Women in Franchising, Women Franchise Wednesday. Cheers.
Cheers, everyone.
Cheers, Don.
Cheers.
Tani.